Entry 11, The Duke's Choice Channel. Phase 1 Story. Title: Her father's debts bought her a duke. He paid them twice over and asked for nothing else. Engine: B. Sold, forced contract, right arrow, rescued, or love. Narrator: the Duke's brother, Alastair, younger brother of the Duke of Strathvain. Heroine: Elspeth Corwin, debtor's daughter, quiet and dignified. The Duke: the Highland Duke of Strathvain, His Grace, Caelan Strathvain. Trigger / setup: her father's catastrophic debts force her into a marriage contract with the Duke, arranged by her uncle without her knowledge. Setting: a carriage / country road, right arrow, Strathvain Hall, a Highland estate, stone and heather. Ending type: the forced match became true love, public claiming. Tender. Mood / register: brooding then tender. Seed film: The King's Speech, 2010. Dignity under pressure, unexpected alliance, the voice as quiet power. Target duration: 30 minutes, 3, 900 words at 130 WPM. Ban trope check: no real people, no explicit content. Engine B not used previously. No cruel humbled beat forced into this story. Fresh ducal epithet: Highland / Strathvain. Fresh setup: debtor's daughter contract. Heroine has quiet strength. Duke has brooding edge and a code. No melodrama without earned period moments. No anachronism, no female narrator, no profanity or gore. Story. I will tell you the story the way I lived it, standing in doorways, carrying messages, and watching my brother become a man I had nearly stopped believing he could be. My name is Alastair Strathvain. Caelan is the eldest. The title fell to him at 19, the debts fell with it, and whatever warmth he'd once possessed followed our father into the ground. By the time I am describing the autumn of his 31st year, people called him the Highland Duke. They did not mean it kindly. They meant remote. They meant implacable. They meant, do not approach unless your business is urgent, your posture is perfect, and your nerve is iron. He was not cruel, I want to be clear about that. He was precise. There is a difference, though aristocratic society rarely troubles to find it. The arrangement with the Corwins was my Uncle Edmund's doing, Edmund, who managed the Strathvain accounts, and had over the previous 2 years identified every soft pressure point in northern England's financial landscape. Reginald Corwin had borrowed against his estate 3 times and lost the gamble each time. He owed the Strathvain accounts a sum that would have made a lesser man weep in the street. Edmund had gone to him quietly. He had laid the contract on the table. And the solution he offered was, in Edmund's words, elegant. The eldest Corwin daughter would marry Caelan. I did not learn the details until the girl arrived. She came in a hired carriage, not ours, not the Corwin coach, which had apparently been sold, a hired carriage that rattled up the long drive on a Tuesday morning in October with the heather still purple on the hills and the sky the color of pewter. I was at the window in the upper hall when it arrived. Caelan was in his study, which was where Caelan always was. The carriage door opened. A young woman stepped out. She was not what I had expected. Edmund had mentioned the Corwin girl in the same tone he used for a line item: adequate, suitable, no complications. What I saw was a woman of perhaps 23 who descended from a broken springed carriage on a cold morning with her spine perfectly straight and her expression perfectly composed, as though arriving at a Highland estate to marry a stranger was a thing she did every Tuesday and had simply learned to manage. She looked up at the house. She did not flinch at its size, though it is the kind of size that makes people flinch. She adjusted her single traveling bag, one bag, I noted. The Corwins had clearly not sent her with much, and she walked to the front door as though she had every right in the world to be there. I went downstairs. Her name was Elspeth. I know that now, but it took 3 days to learn it, because Caelan conducted the first interview with his solicitor present and referred to her throughout as Miss Corwin, and she referred to him throughout as Your Grace, and neither of them offered anything resembling a first name. I was not present for the interview. I had it from the solicitor who had it from himself, and who told me about it over brandy that evening with the expression of a man who has witnessed something he cannot quite classify. She read the contract, he said. Of course she read it, I said. She's not a parcel. No, he turned his glass. She read all of it, 12 pages. She asked 3 questions. The first was about the provision for her mother if the marriage produced no heir. The second was about the management of her father's remaining estate after the debts were cleared. The third, he paused. The third, she asked whether His Grace intended the arrangement to be a legal formality or whether he expected, she used the word participation, whether he expected her participation in the social obligations of the dukedom. I set down my glass. What did Kalen say? He said the question was reasonable. The solicitor looked almost moved. In 4 years of service, I have never heard His Grace call a question reasonable. She was put in the East Wing. Kalen was in the West. Strathvane Hall is large enough that this arrangement could have been enforced for decades without either party encountering the other. I suspected that was the intention, at least on Kalan's part. He had agreed to the contract because the financial logic was sound, and because Edmund had presented it as a solution to a problem. He had not, as far as I could determine, given much thought to the living woman the contract concerned. I gave thought to her. On the second morning, I found her in the library before breakfast. She had pulled 3 books from the shelf, a history of the Highland clans, an atlas, and a dry volume on estate management in the northern counties. And she was reading the estate management volume with a small notebook open beside her, taking notes. "Good morning," I said. She looked up without alarm. "Good morning," a pause, "you are the Duke's brother." "Alistair," I sat down across from her. "You are researching the estate." "I am trying to understand what I have entered into," she said it without apology. "Your Grace, the Duke, gave me no information about the nature of the estate's requirements. The contract specified my obligations in legal terms. I prefer to understand the practical ones." I looked at the notebook. She had written a list of questions in a hand so precise it might have been typeset. Drainage on the eastern fields, yield on the northern tenancies, the state of the dower house, the history of the clan seats formal gatherings, the name of the housekeeper and the cook. "You wrote to Kalen for this information?" I asked. "I sent a note yesterday afternoon. He has not replied. No bitterness in it, simple fact. So I am using the library." I liked her very much at that moment. I was also aware, in the way one becomes aware of trouble that has not yet arrived, that Kalen was going to find her considerably more complicated than Edmund had implied. The first real confrontation happened on the 4th day. I say confrontation, that is not quite right. It was more like the meeting of 2 unmovable objects who had not yet decided what to do about each other. Kalen came to the library. He came, I learned later, because his housekeeper, Mrs. Drummond, had told him his intended was asking about the dower house, and Kalen had decided this required clarification. He was the kind of man who preferred to clarify things himself, in person, with no intermediaries, so that there could be no misunderstanding about what had been said. He found Elspeth at the reading table, with the atlas open to the northern counties. I was there. I had taken to spending mornings in the library. I told myself it was coincidence. Kalen looked at the atlas, then at her, then at me. He did not ask what I was doing there. He crossed to the table, pulled out a chair, not beside her but across from her, the full table between them, and sat down. "You asked Mrs. Drummond about the dower house," he said. "I did." She did not put down the atlas. "I wanted to understand its condition. It occurred to me that if the arrangement, ours, proves unsatisfactory to either party, we should know what options exist." Silence. "You are considering the possibility that it will be unsatisfactory," Kalen said. "I am considering all possibilities." She looked at him then, not with defiance, not with appeal, with the frank, level look of someone who has been through enough that false reassurance holds no attraction. "I was not consulted about this arrangement, Your Grace. My uncle and my father made it between them while I was visiting my mother in Bath. I arrived home to find the contract already signed and the date already set. I want to be clear, I am not blaming you for any of that. I am simply explaining why I think it wise to understand the full landscape of what I have entered." Kalen said nothing for a moment. He was looking at her. I know that look. It is the look he gets when something has not gone the way his calculations predicted, and he is adjusting. "The dower house is sound," he said finally. "It was repaired in the spring. If it becomes necessary for you to use it, it will be habitable." "Thank you." "Your note," he said. "You asked about the eastern fields. The drainage lines on the map seem old. I was curious whether the yield had suffered. The eastern yield dropped 17% last harvest. We are renegotiating the contract with the draining firm in January." He paused. The question was reasonably specific. My father's estate was smaller, but the soil problems were similar. She said it quietly. He did not address them in time. Another silence. Kalen looked down at the atlas, then back at her. Something shifted in his expression, very slightly, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. I will have Mrs. Drummond take you through the house this afternoon, he said. All of it, not only the dower house. You should know what you are, what you have come to. He stood, adjusted his coat, and left. Elspeth watched him go, then she looked at me. He almost said, what you have come home to, she said. I stared at her. He stopped himself. She looked back at the atlas. I wonder why. The weeks before the wedding were quiet in the way of Highland autumns. Not empty, not peaceful exactly, but full of a particular kind of stillness in which everything seemed to be waiting for something to be decided. Elspeth threw herself into the estate with the competence of someone who had been preparing for exactly this, though she could not have been. She met the tenants. She learned their names not as a social performance, the way visiting ladies sometimes did, repeating names back with practiced warmth. She actually learned them, remembered the details, asked after the things she had been told the week before. The shepherd on the north track had a daughter who had been ill. Elspeth asked after her the following Tuesday and remembered the girl's name. The tenants talked. Tenants always talk. By the third week, Mrs. Drummond told me the north track shepherd had taken to calling her the right one. Kalen heard this. I do not know how Kalen hears things in that house the way the house itself hears them, through the stone. He said nothing about it to me. But I noticed that when he encountered Elspeth in the corridor or at the foot of the stairs, he did not simply nod and continue as he had done in the first week. He paused. Sometimes he asked something about the drainage negotiation he had mentioned, about whether Mrs. Drummond had shown her the east storerooms. Not conversation, exactly. More like a man testing the quality of something he has been handed. And she answered him in the same key. Direct, specific, no performance. I watched them and I thought, these two are conducting some kind of negotiation that neither of them will admit is happening. It was the evening before the wedding when things broke open. I had not anticipated it. I think most of us thought that they would be married in the morning, that it would be a quiet affair in the estate chapel with the solicitor and the housekeeper as witnesses, and that life at Strathvin would continue in roughly its current form, now with a duchess who kept meticulous notes. I was coming down the east corridor when I heard Elspeth's voice, not raised, but audible through the half-open door of the small sitting room. I stopped. I'm not asking you to feel something you do not feel, she was saying. I am asking you to tell me what you expect, not from the arrangement, from me. Kalen's voice, lower and harder to catch. The contract specifies. I have read the contract. I am asking what the contract does not say. A pause. I don't know what you mean, Kalen said. I think you do. Not unkind, steady. You are a man who keeps a great deal inside a very controlled exterior. You have been careful with me these past weeks. More careful than I expected. I am grateful for it. But there is something you have not said, and I would rather know what it is the night before than discover it afterward. Silence, long enough that I held my breath. I did not want this, Kalen said finally. His voice had changed, something had come loose in it, some restraint that he usually kept cinched tight. The arrangement. Edmund brought it to me as a solution, and I agreed because the numbers made sense and because I thought it would be as it has always been, a practical matter, a legal one. And now, another silence. You asked about the eastern fields, he said. You knew what you were looking for. You came to this house with one bag and no bitterness, and you read a 12-page contract and asked about my tenants' names before you learned mine. Elspeth said nothing. I don't know what to do with you, Kalen said. It came out roughly, like an admission he had not planned to make. I have been managing this estate and this title for 12 years, and I am competent at that. I know how to run the accounts and settle the disputes and make the decisions that need to be made. I do not know, he stopped. You do not know how to be known, she said, very quiet, no triumph in it. The silence after that was the longest yet. My voice, he said, and then he stopped again. I frowned. I had not expected that. When I was a boy, he said slowly, I could not speak in public without losing the thread of what I was trying to say. Not a stammer, precisely, something worse in a way. A locking. Panic behind the eyes that no one could see. My father called it weakness. He had me tutored for 2 years until I mastered it, but the mastery cost. He cut himself off. I tell you this because you asked what I have not said, and the answer is, I have spent so long being controlled that I have forgotten what it costs. And you walked into this house and there was nothing controlled about you. You were simply yourself, and I did not know what to do with that. I leaned against the wall of the corridor and did not breathe. Elspeth spoke after a moment. My father, she said, borrowed money because he was afraid. He was afraid of looking poor, afraid of being thought less than he was, afraid that if anyone saw the truth of our situation they would, I don't know, turn away. He kept borrowing to hold the fear at bay, and it cost us everything. A pause. I understand what it is to have built walls against something frightening. I am not frightened of yours. I may not be what you hoped for, he said. I did not come here with hopes, she said. I came here with a notebook and a willingness to work. I think that may be enough to begin with. A long, still moment. Yes, he said, and then very quietly, Elspeth. Her first name, the first time. I walked away down the corridor and let them have the rest of it. The wedding was small. The estate chapel, the solicitor, Mrs. Drummond, and the North Track shepherd who showed up unbidden and stood at the back with his cap in his hands and his eyes suspiciously bright, because the North Track shepherd had decided she was the right one and apparently felt he had a stake in the outcome. Kaelan said his vows in the even, measured tone he used for all public speech. But when the minister reached the part about cherishing, he turned to look at her. Not at the minister, not at the legal text, at her. And something in his face was open in a way I had never seen before. She looked back at him and did not look away. 3 months later, at the New Year gathering at Strathvain, a formal affair, neighboring gentry, the county families who had heard about the Highland Duke's strange marriage contract, and attended largely to assess the situation. I watched the two of them in the doorway of the great hall. It is a doorway that has a step, and the step is uneven and it catches people. It caught Elspeth, a slight stumble as they entered, nothing dramatic, a half step off the stone. Kaelan caught her. His hand was at her arm before she had fully registered the stumble, steadying her without ceremony, and when she looked up at him in that startled way, he said something I could not hear across the noise of the room. She laughed. It was the first time I had heard her laugh with ease. He looked at her the way a man looks at something he has been handed and has only just understood the value of. The county families who had come to assess the situation assessed it. The verdict, I was told, went around the room in under an hour. The Highland Duke, who had been described as remote, implacable, and best approached only if your business was urgent. The Highland Duke, it was now said, had found the right one. They were not wrong. I do not tell this story often. Kaelan would not want me to. He is a private man and will remain so until the end. But there is a thing worth saying, and I will say it once. He paid her father's debts, all of them, every pound, the morning after the wedding. She had not asked him to. The contract had specified a different arrangement, a slower settlement. She found out from the solicitor 3 weeks later, and she came to find him in the study. You did not have to pay them at once, she said. No, he agreed. The contract was a starting point, he said. I revised it. She looked at him for a long moment. Why? He had been writing something. He put down his pen and he looked at her, and he said the thing he had apparently been composing for weeks. Because you came here with one bag and no bitterness and asked about my tenants before you asked about anything you were owed. And I did not want you to carry your father's debts for another year when I could clear them in an afternoon. And because, a pause, the control again and then the loosening of it. Because you are my wife, and I would like you to feel not obligated, not contracted. I would like you to feel that you may stay because you choose to. Elspeth looked at him for a very long time. Kaelan, she said. His name, the first time she had used it, just that, his name. He stood up from the desk. He crossed the room, and whatever happened next is theirs, not mine, and I was not in the doorway to witness it. But I know what the North Track shepherd would have said. The right one. Word count, words estimated read time at 130 WPM, tilde 30 minutes. Engine B, sold forced contract, right arrow rescued or love. Narrator, the Duke's brother, Alistair. Heroine, Elspeth Corwin, debtor's daughter, asterisk. Duke, Kaelan Strathvain, the Highland Duke of Strathvain. Mood, brooding then tender. Band trope check. No real people, no explicit content, engine be fresh. No cruel humbled beat forced fresh ducal epithet. Fresh setup. Heroine has quiet strength, Duke has brooding edge and a code. No anachronism, male narrator.